Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are undertaking, well, a truly ambitious mission,
It
really.
feels like it, yeah.
We're trying to fundamentally rewrite the language we use to describe life itself,
That's a good way to put it.
moving past just the genetic code, the purely chemical view of the cell,
Right.
and into a framework that says the living system runs on something else. Fields, resonance, maybe even intelligence.
It is a profound shift,
Yeah.
really paradigm-altering stuff. For decades, the main view has been, well, the cell is a complex machine, but passive, fundamentally.
Chemical automaton.
Exactly. Actions predetermined by its pathways. But the sources we're digging into today, they challenge that head-on. They argue the cell is, in fact, a resonant intelligent agent.
Okay, that's the hook right there, a resonant intelligent agent. So our deep dive is focused on unpacking how that supposedly works, this proposed structure, the bioelectric code. Our mission, really, is to take these incredibly complex source materials, they're full of concepts from coherence, physics, systems theory, you name it, and try to distill them into something clear, actionable knowledge.
And it's crucial to grasp, right from the start, the main argument here. The conventional gene-centric model. It's brilliant, don't get me wrong. It details the mechanics perfectly, transcription, translation, all that.
How the bricks are made.
Precisely. But this theory argues it's fundamentally incomplete. It explains the mechanics, but it struggles with the blueprint for the building. Things like systemic coordination, how cells remember things beyond just chemistry, and importantly, how they make adaptive decisions so quickly.
So if the genetic code is like the static written instruction manual for putting the parts together, then the bioelectric code is more like the dynamic, real-time operating system telling those parts when and how to work together coherently.
That's a great analogy, precisely. The bioelectric code reframes biology as a language, yes, but one using potentials, frequencies, and this idea of holographic resonance.
So life communicates using information in structured energy fields, not just molecules floating around.
That's the idea, not relying solely on slow molecular diffusion anyway.
And this obviously requires us to rethink the cell itself. It's not just a factory anymore. The sources define it as a negentropic intelligence unit. Okay, that's a dense term.
It is.
Let's break it down. Entropy is the tendency towards chaos, disorder. So what does a negentropic unit actually do?
Well, a negentropic system is one that actively creates and maintains order. It pushes back against that constant environmental pull towards decay.
So it generates order.
Yes, actively. In this model, the cell isn't just passively surviving, it's aggressively generating and stabilizing order, what the theory calls coherence. By sensing its environment, actively selecting internal states that promote coherence, and then projecting that state of order outward. They're constantly managing their own coherence.
So the cell isn't just, say, reacting because a certain chemical bumps into it. It's actively measuring its own resonance state, its own field, and adjusting things internally to stay coherent.
That's the core idea. And this capability, this cellular coherence intelligence, or CCI, needs a specific physical setup to work.
Right. You can't just have software without hardware.
Exactly. The theory posits a minimum required architecture for this intelligence. They call it the cellular coherence triad.
The triad, that's the circuit board, and CCI is the software running on it.
That's a good way to think about it, yes.
Okay, let's unpack this hardware then, this triad. So the triad, it's made of DNA, microtubules, and membranes. Three things we know are in the cell.
Right, familiar components, but viewed through a very different lens.
And the argument is that intelligence, in this context, emerges not just because things are complex, but because these three work together coherently.
Yes, the synergy is absolutely key. They have to operate in a closed, coherent circuit.
If one part isn't coherent, the whole system breaks down.
That's the proposition. They represent three essential roles in a continuous flowing circuit of information and energy. Let's start with the first one, DNA. In this model, DNA gets a radical reframing. It's called the instructional resonator.
We know DNA stores the chemical instructions for proteins, the genetic code. But if it's a resonator, what's it resonating with? And what's it storing besides amino acid sequences?
Well, in this bioelectric view, DNA encodes coherence.
Yeah.
You need to think of it less like a linear text file.
Like reading a tape.
Exactly. Think of it more like a complex three-dimensional fractal resonator, or maybe a fractal antenna.
Okay.
It's structured, the idea goes, to store not just those chemical instructions, but a vast fractal spectral library. A library of coherence eigenmodes.
Whoa, okay. Coherence eigenmode. Let's simplify that. What is that in plain English?
An eigenmode is basically a unique vibrational state, a specific, stable frequency signature that the system, in this case, the cell, can naturally settle into.
Like a natural harmonic.
Very much like that. Think of DNA as having access to millions of potential channels, like on a radio. Each channel is an eigenmode, a specific blueprint for a stable state the cell could adopt. Maybe that state is divide or differentiate or moves over here.
Ah, okay. So DNA isn't just the instructions, it sets the coherence grammar. It defines the whole range of possible stable resonance states the cell can be in.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
It provides the possibility, the complete library of potential states, the latent instruction of what the cell could be doing, but expresses a vibrational potential, not just a chemical sequence.
Okay, possibility defined by DNA. Now you need something to take that potential, that latent instruction, and actually do something with it.
Right.
Which brings us to component 2, the microtubules. We usually think of these as the cell's scaffolding, maybe transport tracks.
The cell's plumbing, yeah.
But here, they're the execution engines.
Their role is defined as executing coherence. So if DNA is the library of blueprints, the microtubules are like the integrated fiber optic network and the active construction crew.
Oh.
They're what transforms DNA's static possibility into dynamic real-time operation.
How does that physically work? We're talking about sending information inside a very busy, messy cell.
And this is where the idea of non-dissipative mechanics comes in. It's critical. The microtubules are proposed to act as resonance highways.
Highways.
Yes, distributing coherence packets across the cytoplasm. And these packets are described specifically as solitons.
Solitons. I've heard that term in physics. It's a wave that doesn't spread out right. It holds its shape.
Exactly. A soliton is a self-reinforcing wave of energy and information that travels without losing its form or strength.
Okay, that's crucial. Because in the normal chemical view, a signal just diffuses. It spreads out, gets weaker, slows down, like smoke in the air.
Right. Degradation is the norm.
But a soliton, it's like sending a pure data packet down a fiber optic cable, perfectly intact, instantly across the city.
That's a perfect analogy. Solitons would be the mechanism for that signal, that chosen coherent state from DNA to travel instantly and without loss to the membrane or perhaps back to other parts of the nucleus.
Wow.
And there's more. Microtubules are also described as crucial symmetry restorers.
Meaning
Meaning they actively sense and buffer disturbances from outside noise, heat stress, chemical shocks. They work immediately to reestablish internal order, internal symmetry. They have this built-in nisentropic function. They're like the cell's active noise-canceling system.
the vigilant security detail, constantly maintaining order.
You could say that they're called the syntax engines because they determine how these coherent sequences, these solitons, are arranged, stabilized, and put into action.
Okay, so DNA provides the range of stable states, the possibilities. Microtubules provide the rapid lossless execution pathway using solitons, arranging the syntax. That leaves the third part of the triad, membranes, the field interfaces.
Right. Traditionally, we see the membrane as just a boundary, maybe with some gates,
Yeah.
a semi-permeable barrier.
Keeps the inside in and the outside out.
But here, it's elevated. It's seen as a sophisticated two-way resonance projector and a sensory gateway. Its function is to project and receive coherence.
The cell's face to the world, but an active face.
Much more than just a face. It's doing two critical things at once. First, it actively projects the cell's internal coherent state outward as a biofield. This is how it interacts with neighbors, the tissue, maybe even distant parts of the organism.
Okay.
And second, simultaneously, it's receiving signals from the larger system, the systemic organismal field, the context of the whole body.
So it's like a holographic screen projecting the cell's internal story while also absorbing the orchestra playing around it.
That's a lovely way to put it. It connects the local to the global.
We often talk about electrical gradients across membranes, ion channels. In this model, are those ionic currents sodium, potassium, calcium chloride, are they just carrying charge or something more?
They're seen as much more. They're sophisticated carriers of coherence information. These interface operators, the ionic currents, the voltage gradients, they regulate where and when coherence gets projected out or received. They effectively convert the internal resonance state, the one set up by DNA and executed by microtubules, into a publicly readable, oscillating field pattern. The membrane turns an internal vibration into a specific external frequency signature that carries meaning for other cells.
Meaning like, I'm healthy, or I need help, or I'm becoming a liver cell.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
That level of specificity.
So the synergy makes sense. DNA holds the possibilities. Microtubules execute a chosen possibility rapidly via solitons. Membranes project the result as a meaningful field, linking the cell into the wider network.
A perfectly engineered closed circuit for coherent, intelligent operation. That's the core idea of the triad. Hashtag TakeCheck3. The language and mechanism of coherence. So, okay, we have the architecture of the triad. Now we can dig into the actual language that travels on these coherence highways, these resonance potentials. This is supposedly the fundamental alphabet of the bioelectric code.
Right. This feels like a really key distinction. We're all familiar with basic electrical potentials, a voltage difference across a nerve membrane during an impulse. How is a resonance potential different from just a simple voltage spike?
Yeah, it's a crucial difference. It's maybe like the difference between a simple Morse code dot,
A binary blip.
right, versus a highly encrypted, multi-layered data stream. The resonance potential is described as the fundamental informational unit of this code. It's not just about the strength, the magnitude of the voltage.
Okay.
It's a complex field state that carries a unique frequency signature. It combines apparently three critical elements: magnitude, rhythm, and phase, all bundled into a single coherent instruction.
Okay, magnitude, rhythm, phase. Can you give us a quick analogy for those three?
Sure. Magnitude is pretty straightforward. Think of it like the volume or the amplitude of the signal. How strong is it?
Loudness.
Right. Rhythm is the pulse, the oscillation frequency. How fast does the signal repeat? Is it a slow beat or a fast one?
Tempo.
Exactly. But the element that might be most critical here is the phase.
Phase. That's about timing, like when the wave peaks relative to other waves.
Precisely. It's the timing, the alignment of the oscillation relative to all the other signals happening. In a coherent system, like the body is supposed to be, the phase relationships between trillions of cells are thought to create these vast interference patterns. And that's where holographic memory and structure could come from.
Wow. Okay.
So a resonance potential isn't just a voltage. It's a targeted, structured waveform carrying dense information through its strength, its tempo, and its precise timing.
And the sources we looked at place this within a larger framework, something called the Unified Coherence Theory of Everything, or UCTE. That sounds ambitious.
It certainly is. The UCTE provides the, let's say, philosophical or physical underpinning. It suggests these resonance potentials are essentially coherence eigenvalues, those stable states we talked about with DNA, but expressed in biological matter. They form the working grammar of these coherence mechanics.
So the UCTE basically says coherence is a fundamental force or principle in the universe.
Something like that, yeah.
And these potentials are how life uses that principle. They're the stable informational states the cell can actively choose to be in.
That's the gist of it. They're the available states of being, biologically speaking.
Okay, so these complex resonance potentials, they're organized by the triad into a very deliberate structure. The sources call it the tri-layer architecture of transmission.
Yes, it's like the three-step process for turning a potential idea into a meaningful action or signal.
Layer 1 is the instruction layer, DNA.
Right. Here, the DNA, acting as that spectral library, provides the whole alphabet. All the possible vibrational states the cell is allowed to adopt, the available coherence eigenvalues. It's the source code repository.
Got it. Then layer 2, the execution layer, microtubules.
This is the dynamic processor, the syntax engine, as they call it. It takes those static instructions, those possibilities from DNA, and turns them into dynamic, circulating resonance potentials. It selects, arranges, stabilizes, and then transmits these signals as coherent sequences the solitons through the cell. It dictates the precise order and timing of the information flow, like arranging words into a sentence.
Okay, instruction, then execution, and finally layer 3, the projection layer, membranes.
This is the output stage. This is where the internal signal gets projected outward and gains external meaning. Semantics. The membranes act as semantic amplifiers.
Semantic amplifiers.
Meaning they project those internal potentials outward as these holographic patterns that carry an unambiguous instruction, a clear meaning for the surrounding tissue network. So if the internal state is, say, I am stressed and need to protect myself, the membrane projects the precise field pattern that signals that to its neighbors.
Which leads us to maybe the most complex, but also the most critical part of this theory. How does the cell actually choose which instruction to follow? This idea of coherent selection.
Yes, this is where the paradigm really does shift dramatically. If we stick to standard biochemistry, a cell deciding to divide is just the inevitable result of a chain reaction. Ligands bind, kinases phosphorylate, etc.
A deterministic cascade.
Exactly. This framework reframes that whole process as active coherence selection from a field of possibilities. The cell isn't just running a pre-programmed calculation, it's actively selecting a preferred vibrational future state.
So The triad generates this field of operational options. Let's say there are 5 stable resonance states available at that moment. The cell has to pick one. Is this where things get a bit quantum?
It certainly sounds like it. The choice mechanism is described as the observer function operating at the cellular scale.
The observer function, like in quantum mechanics, where observing collapses the wave function.
That's the analogy they draw, yes. It involves the collapse of a resonance superposition. The idea is that all those possible resonance states are momentarily held in superposition, existing as potentials simultaneously. Then, the active intelligence of the cell, its coherence management system, acts to stabilize one of them, collapsing the possibilities into a single actuality.
That is a staggering implication. A cell acting as a quantum observer. What does that collapse physically look like within the triad architecture?
Well, it's described as a multi-point stabilization event happening across the triad. It starts with the selection and stabilization of one specific vibrational state within the DNA spectral library.
Locking onto one frequency in the library.
Then, the microtubules instantly route and stabilize the specific soliton pathway that corresponds to that choice, effectively executing the decision.
Laying down the tracks for that specific signal.
And finally, the membranes project the chosen state, the actuality, out into the external biofield. The decision becomes manifest.
The sources sum this up with a really nice phrase, an ontological progression of choice.
They did. It maps it beautifully onto the triad. DNA provides the possibility, the entire menu of viable coherence options.
The library.
Microtubules enact the probability they manage the pathways, making one potential path vastly more likely to be actualized by routing and stabilizing it.
The execution.
And membranes manifest the actuality of the chosen state is projected, becomes real, and interacts with the world.
Possibility, probability, actuality.
It paints a picture of the cell exhibiting genuine adaptive intelligence through this fundamental process of coherence selection.
Okay. If we even partially accept this, we're suggesting the cell is, at its core, making choices based on resonance and coherence. But how does this scale up? You've got trillions of these intelligent units. How do they coordinate systemically? Hashtag Changhitaga VB the holographic principle and systemic coherence.
Right, the scaling problem. This is where the bioelectric code is proposed to be fundamentally holographic in nature. That's how the massive coordination is thought to happen.
Holographic, meaning like those pictures where every piece contains the whole image?
Essentially, yes. The idea is that the local resonance patterns, the signals projected by a single cell, somehow contain or reflect information about the entire organism.
So a single cell's signal isn't just about itself. It carries embedded data about the whole body's state and structure.
That's the core principle. This is the proposed mechanism ensuring a cell's activity is never truly isolated. Every act of coherence selection, every signal sent out, is immediately embedded within and has to harmonize with the context of the whole organism. They call it maintaining local global coherence.
Okay. To explain this, the sources introduce two quite technical terms we need to carefully distinguish, the hologene and the hologene.
Yes, let's tackle the hologene first. The hologene is defined as the transmissive unit of coherence that's projected by the individual cell.
So it's the outgoing signal packet.
Exactly. It's the syntax of the bioelectric code made manifest that specific structured packet of resonance potentials carrying the cell's current state and intention outward.
It's the cell broadcasting, here's my status, here's what I'm doing or intending.
Pretty much. And its construction is pure triad function. DNA provides the spectral blueprint for the signal. Microtubules act as the lossless conduits, ensuring the signal travels through the cell without degrading. And the membranes are the holographic projectors, emitting that oscillating bioelectric field, which is the hologene, carrying it outward. And just to connect it back, in that UCTE framework, the hologene corresponds to what they call the asymmetry resonance operator.
Asymmetry.
Because it represents the expression of the localized self, the individual cell's information breaking the symmetry of the whole. It's the projective observer function, externalizing its specific information into the larger field.
Okay, so hologene is the individual outgoing asymmetric signal. Then the hologene must be the whole thing, the field of the entire organism.
Correct. The hologene represents the integrated, holistic coherence field of the entire systems, the coherence whole, the systemic context within which every single hologene projection happens.
And its function is to unify all those individual signals, to keep everything playing the same tune.
Precisely. You can think of it as the grand unified resonance pattern created by the superposition, the interference, of all the individual hologenes being projected by every cell in the body, all at once. The hologene ensures that any local signal embeds seamlessly, maintaining the organism as a single coherent entity. In a sense, the hologene is the organism, viewed as a unified field of coherence. And in the UCTE language, the hologene corresponds to the symmetry coherence operator. It's the integrative field, perhaps akin to a consciousness field at the organism level, that holds the entire system together in balance.
So life is this constant dance between the individual expression, the hologene's asymmetry, and the systemic context, the hold-in symmetry.
That's a beautiful way to summarize it.
Yeah.
That dynamic interplay is what maintains coherent life.
This holographic structure implies something pretty radical about resilience, doesn't it? If the information is distributed holographically.
Yes. If the blueprint isn't stored in just one place but is distributed across the field,
then damaging one part of the body shouldn't destroy the whole design. The information should still be there in the remaining field.
that's the powerful implication. Information, in this view, is stored primarily in the phase relationships within those interference patterns created by all the membrane projections, not just in the physical structure of any one cell or tissue.
Which would make the system incredibly robust against damage.
Theoretically, yes. If a section of tissue gets damaged, the overall coherence pattern, the hologene, should persist because the information about the whole is contained and reflected in every remaining part of the field. This field memory could be what guides complex processes like regeneration.
That provides a fascinating theoretical underpinning for things like limb regeneration in salamanders, or even just complex wound healing, which classical models often struggle to explain fully with just chemistry.
It offers a different explanatory framework based on field guidance rather than just chemical gradients.
Okay, this is deeply theoretical but compelling. Let's try to bring it down to earth. How would this cellular coherence intelligence CCI actually look in practical action? #V. Cellular coherence intelligence CCI in action. Right, this has to be the proof in the pudding, doesn't it? Showing how the bioelectric code might explain things the genetic code alone finds difficult. Let's start with something very visible: wound healing and regeneration.
This is arguably one of the clearest potential examples of field-based intelligence at work. When tissue gets damaged, say, a cut, the immediate response isn't just cells pumping out growth factors, although that happens too.
Okay.
In this model, the damaged cells instantly start emitting radically altered resonance fields, disrupted hologenes. They're basically shouting incoherence into the network.
So the injury itself is broadcast as a field distortion, a disruption in the local hologene signal.
Yes, like a loud, dissonant chord in the body's symphony. But the really key mechanism proposed is field-guided restoration. The body needs to rebuild a precise shape, right? Not just fill a gap.
Yeah, restore the original pattern.
So the idea is that the necessary target geometry for healing, rebuilding that perfect skin layer, or maybe even reconnecting complex tissues, is projected as a kind of resonance hologram, a template guided by the memory stored in the systemic hologene.
A bioelectric blueprint for the finished repair. And what does projecting that blueprint do to the surrounding healthy cells?
It acts as an energetic guide, an organizational field. The neighboring cells, sensing this target resonance hologram, receive clear, field-based instructions that can potentially override the local chemical chaos caused by the wound.
Okay.
This holographic template guides cell migration, telling cells where to go. It guides differentiation, telling them what to become. It guides proliferation, telling them when to divide. It forces them to align their activities towards restoring that complex pattern. The field essentially tells migrating cells, stop here, turn left, differentiate now. This boundary is complete.
So cell migration isn't just about following a chemical scent trail.
Not just that, perhaps.
It's also about actively seeking the specific coherent resonance signature of the healthy, healed state, tuning into that blueprint.
That's the concept. Chemical messengers might provide the go signal, tell a cell to divide, but the bioelectric field, the resonance hologram, provides the where and the what shape instructions needed to restore the whole structure correctly.
That concept flows directly into the even bigger challenge, the initial development of an organism, morphogenesis, building the entire complex body from just one cell.
Morphogenesis, in this view, is the ultimate orchestration of bioelectric fields. These fields act as the primary blueprints governing all pattern formation during development, and the cell's triad is the engine driving that orchestration.
How does the triad manage that?
Well, DNA encodes the available structural coherence eigenmodes, the potential shapes and forms, the basic body plan possibilities.
Like the eigenmode for build a limb versus build an eye.
Exactly, the fundamental resonance patterns for different structures. Then the microtubules execute the specific resonance flows needed to establish and stabilize the developmental gradients across the embryo. They ensure rapid, non-dissipative signal transmission is possible.
Okay.
And crucially, the membranes project the specific morphogenetic fields, the developmental hologenes. They act as localized field generators that literally align groups of cells, guiding them into the required global patterns, forming tissues, organs, shaping the body. It reframes development as this incredible holographic resonance symphony, where pattern emerges and is maintained through field alignment.
Which suggests, theoretically at least, that if you could carefully manipulate that guiding bioelectric field during development,
You might potentially alter the resulting morphology, yes, even if the underlying genetic code stayed the same.
it implies the field is perhaps the master controller of form, with the genes providing the necessary building blocks and rules.
That's one interpretation, yes.
Yeah.
The field is the architect, the genes is the materials list.
Okay, let's consider when things go wrong. When a cell encounters overwhelming stress heat, toxins, radiation, whatever, how does the adaptive stress response fit into this CCI model? Is it just damage control?
It's framed entirely as an act of intelligent coherence management. When a cell faces a severe stressor, its an internal order, its negentropy is fundamentally challenged. Its resonance state gets perturbed, becomes noisy, dissonant.
Okay.
It then uses its coherence selection capability to decide on a response. Can I fight this and restore coherence? Can I adapt? Or do I need to sacrifice myself for the good of the whole?
What happens in that fight scenario? How does it try to restore coherence?
That's where the microtubules come in again as symmetry restores. They immediately try to buffer the perturbations, absorb the chaotic energy, and actively work to restabilize the internal coherent state against the external noise. It's an active energetic defense.
But sometimes the stress is just too much. The cell can't recover. It enters that state we normally call programmed cell death or apoptosis.
Right. And under the bioelectric code framework, apoptosis is reframed. It's not seen as a failure of the cell,
But as
possibly the highest form of intelligent coherence management. If the cell, through its coherence selection mechanisms, calculates that it cannot restore internal symmetry, if it determines that its continued existence, projecting a distorted incoherent hologene, would risk destabilizing the entire system, the hologene.
it makes a kind of team player decision.
Exactly. It chooses to initiate apoptosis. It projects the specific apoptotic signals via its membranes. It sacrifices itself, sacrifices its localized asymmetry operator, its hologene, precisely to preserve the integrity and symmetry of the larger system, the hologene.
So cell death is an intelligent act of systemic preservation. That's quite a perspective shift.
It is. It recasts it as a calculated coherence decision, not just a breakdown.
This all underscores how vital intercellular coordination must be. This distributed intelligence has to work flawlessly across trillions of cells, vast distances relative to a cell.
Absolutely. It has to be a continuous, real-time network of intelligence. The model suggests cells form these dynamic coherence networks, not just through slow chemical diffusion, but primarily through rapid membrane projection and resonance coupling between their biofields.
Like a massive biological wireless mesh network operating on resonance frequencies.
That's a very good analogy for it.
And this presumably scales up through the entire biological hierarchy.
Seamlessly is the idea. Tissues emerge not just as collections of cells, but as sophisticated distributed holograms, where the function of, say, a kidney isn't just in the cells, but in the coherent field pattern they collectively generate.
And
Organs might synchronize their activity, not solely through slow hormonal signals, but through resonance harmonics, like different sections of an orchestra, tuning to each other, hitting the right frequencies to coordinate function.
which means the organism, the whole thing, you and me, we emerge as the sum total of all these coherent interactions.
The organism emerges, in this language, as a coherence meta-operator, a sustained, high-level unified intelligence that is maintained by these trillions of intelligent negentropic units, the cells, all acting as perfectly synchronized nodes in this immense dynamic holographic network.
And the bioelectric code is the language that allows all those trillions of localized decisions, those coherent selections, to align into a single, functioning, incredibly resilient whole being.
That's the grand vision presented by this framework. #tag Sister AC conclusion and final thought. So if we try to synthesize the absolute core insights from this deep dive into the bioelectric code, I think the framework definitively positions the cell not as that passive chemical machine we started with.
The automaton.
Right, but as an active resonant participant in a system governed by field-based intelligence,
Right.
where physics, especially coherence physics, plays just as crucial a role as the chemistry.
And the real power, I think, is that it doesn't just say fields matter. It proposes a specific architecture for how that intelligence could work. The cellular coherence triad.
Exactly. It gives us components and roles.
Right.
You have DNA, the instructional library, holding the coherence eigenmodes, the possibility which provides the raw material for the Hall genes.
Check.
You have the microtubules, the execution engines, turning that possibility into probability by managing the rapid, lossless soliton pathways.
Check.
And finally, the membranes, the projection interfaces, broadcasting the chosen actuality out as hologenes, receiving context from the hologene, linking the local to the global.
Possibility, probability, actuality. A neat summary. And this model offers potentially really profound new ways to understand complex phenomena. We talked about wound healing, morphogenesis, even the seemingly paradoxical choice of a cell to undergo apoptosis during stress.
It provides a unifying lens, looking at these processes through the principles of coherent selection and field dynamics, potentially going beyond the limitations of purely deterministic biochemistry.
Yeah, it feels like it adds a whole new dimension.
And that constant interplay, that dance we mentioned between the local self-expression, the hologene, the asymmetry, and the holistic context, the hologene, the symmetry that's what ensures life, is both incredibly diverse and adaptable, yet structurally coherent and stable. It suggests a really deep, elegant organizational principle at work.
Okay, that elegance, that coherence, leads us nicely into our final provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over. If this theoretical framework, which is rooted in ideas like the unified coherence theory, if it holds any water, if it's even partly correct, it means every single cell in your body is an active participant in what could be universal coherence dynamics.
The sources we reviewed close was a pretty striking line, that the cell carries the signature of cosmic intelligence in every active resonance. So the question becomes, if every localized vibrational state, every coherence selection your body makes right now, from healing a tiny scratch you don't even notice, to you focusing your attention on listening to this, if each of those is in alignment with some kind of universal field, what does that imply? What does that suggest about the real nature of biological memory, about consciousness, about awareness itself?
If that complex, distributed, holographic memory, the whole gene potentially persists beyond the physical breakdown of any single part, is the field memory of the organism somehow more fundamental than the matter? Your body isn't just maintaining itself chemically, it's constantly actively collapsing a field of possibilities into a single coherent reality.
And that decision, that collapse, is framed here as a fundamental act of localized resonant intelligence, repeated trillions of times every second.
A profound thought to end on.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the bioelectric code.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.